Hey y'all, this is Moody here. Just wanted to drop sort of a quick video taking inspiration from My Life in Gaming. They've done the games I beat in X year for a couple of years now. I like the style of those videos, but I wanted to take a crack at it and sort of talk to you guys about the games that I beat last year in 2018. This video will be kind of rapid fire. I'm not going to go too in-depth with each game. The ones that I do want to talk about more, I'll probably do an individual video on, but for the time being, these are just my quick thoughts, maybe about 30 seconds to a minute or so each for each one. Starting off, we've got Mario Kart 7, which was kind of a weird game to go back to after having access to a copy of Mario Kart 8 Deluxe all year long. This was still an enjoyable experience to be had. Being one of the later entries, it had a nice wide gamut of tracks to pick from for the retro stages, alongside with a decent selection of newer ones. Xenoblade Chronicles 2 was a wild ride. After not really getting into Xenoblade Chronicles X, this was a nice return to form for the series. The combat was fun and intuitive, if a bit repetitive at times. I'm glad the blade system wasn't another paywalled loot box slash gacha system, even though it kind of felt that way a little bit. You could still get the blades just from normal gameplay, but there was no way for like microtransactions, which was a great thing. New Game Plus has also been very enjoyable so far. The auto battle feature has definitely improved the gameplay experience. Check it out if you like story-driven JRPGs with massive worlds filled to the brim with stuff to do. For Undertale, there's not really much I can say here that hasn't already been said about it. However, the port to the Switch has been pretty fun. I like the new room and boss that they added, the option to play portably is fantastic, and the visual artifacts that I experienced running the PC version in full screen are completely gone. Overall, it's a pretty solid port with some neat additions. After years of people telling me this was either the greatest JRPG ever or the worst designed PlayStation game of all time, I finally buckled and decided to form an opinion of my own. This game was fantastic. The experience definitely had its flaws, but I enjoyed mostly everything the game had to throw at me. The materia system was a bit cumbersome at first, but I learned to get over it just before the game picked up, and it actually became usable. This is a game I would recommend to any JRPG fan. This is another entry where there's not much I can add to the discussion that's already surrounding this game, but Kingdom Hearts 2 is definitely my idea of gaming comfort food, as Try from My Life in Gaming would say. The PS4 port has been bumped up to 1080p 60 frames per second, which is appreciated. The loading times are another thing that were improved in the PS4 port. Check it out if you haven't yet. This is the best way to play it. Donut County was a short and sweet experience, but the length felt just right. If it had been any longer, I probably would have felt like it was overstaying its welcome. I've seen a lot of people compare this game to Katamari, but I think it stands as an excellent game in its own right, as it is far more puzzle-focused than the Katamari series. My extreme bias towards anything Daisuke Pixel creates makes writing this review a bit difficult. This is another short and sweet experience that everyone should try out for themselves. I honestly don't think I ever expected this game to even exist. Isaac from The Binding of Isaac and Quote from Cave Story duking it out on a stage inspired from Sayonara Umihara Kawase? Sign me up. This art style leaves a lot to be desired since it's this weird like pre-rendered and 2D mix, but the game is a blast to play either locally or online. I wanted to love beautiful Katamari, but unfortunately it's just some new Katamari stages with performance issues. I don't want to sound selfish, but I kind of wish Namco would give some more love to entries other than Katamari Damacy when considering remakes, as this game could definitely benefit from the performance improvements on new hardware. This one is skippable, but fun enough and fine if you've run out of other Katamari games to play. For Kirby 64, there's not a lot that I want to say in this video, since I do want to do an entirely independent video that's focused just on this game, but just know that it is one of my absolute favorites and has been in my top 5 for quite a while. The best way to play this one is the way that I played it in 2018, which is on the Wii U Virtual Console. It outputs in 480p and over digital HDMI, so it's just going to look as clean as possible. Going over my notes here, there's not a lot I had to say about Waku Waku 7 other than it was a little stiff but still fun overall. Personally, I don't remember much of the arcade mode aside from the final boss being absurdly difficult. Otherwise, I still remember having a decent amount of fun with it, so check it out if you're into weird, obscure 2D fighters. Kirby Star Allies got a lot of mixed reception when it initially launched because it was seen as just more of the same, which I'm totally cool with. I have a lot of fun with the Kirby series, and the co-op along with the DLC has been really enjoyable, and it's a Kirby experience that I would recommend to anyone who is a fan of the franchise. Since so much has already been said about Kirby's Adventure on the NES, I just want to focus on some of the unique aspects of the 3DS release. So for instance, one, it actually runs in a 3DS mode. It doesn't do any sort of virtual console, and that's because that there is a 3D mode that you can enable where there's this really cool depth with the backgrounds and the sprites and whatnot. You can get a little bit of depth, which is just, I guess, the best way to put it, since that's really all there is to it. You just get a little bit of depth in the visuals, which I think is a nice addition, albeit a little weird. One thing that is nice is that this version runs in what would be considered a pixel perfect mode, whereas on normal NES virtual console games, the picture does get stretched a little bit to fit what is a normal 4:3 aspect ratio, or essentially how you would have seen NES games on your TV, but this causes a little bit of blurring on the horizontal axis, so this version essentially just gives you a way to see the game as it was originally intended by the developers, which I feel is really cool. I'm making an exception for Mario Party 2 in this video since there's not really a way that you can beat the game per se. However, in this case, my friends and I have beaten the CPUs and gotten first place in all of the different boards that the game has to offer. This one was really fun, although it is a little dated. Definitely not as bad as Mario Party 1, but also not as good as like Super Mario Party. I'm going to be honest with you, the only reason that I played this game in particular was because of my friend Boasting Toast, Connor. He started a competitive scene for this game, which I find absolutely hilarious. He quickly became the best player in the world because he was the first person to find an infinite with, I believe it was Red Riding Hood, but either way, this game was just not enjoyable at all. I guess the 1v1 matches can be pretty fun if you're in sort of a competitive setting, but other than that, just please do not play this game. So as you can expect with a video about a backlog, or just going through my backlog and beating games, beating a fighting game usually requires you to do some sort of weird story mode or arcade mode or something along those lines, and Soul Calibur 2 is no stranger to that. It has what's called Weapon Master mode that is a bit of a story. It's kind of like a story, although it just got really repetitive after the first couple missions since it's just all more of the same. It's fun if you're into 3D fighters and into Soul Calibur, especially with this version having the addition of Link. There's not really any reason to go back to this game aside from the one-on-one matches. So I know it's kind of a cliche at this point, but Mighty Gunvolt Burst is what Mighty No. 9 should have been. The gameplay is tight, the graphics are amazing, and the customization is super fun to tinker around with. Continuing with the trend of cliches and just games that I'm late to the party on, Super Mario Odyssey was the most enjoyable Mario experience I've had in a long time. It's the only thing that's gotten close to my experience in the garage playing Super Mario World with my cousins. This just brought back so many good memories for me, and it was just an overall excellent experience. So I bought this game on both the 360 and the PS3, thankfully just before it actually got removed from the stores, and I'm really glad for that, but I didn't actually get around to beating it until 2018, and that was a really bad mistake because this is an excellent game. It's too bad that, you know, it's not available for purchase anymore, but if you have any way to play this, I would highly recommend it. What's always struck me as weird about this game is that the fighting system is really simplified while retaining all of the aspects that people enjoyed from the Versus series. So for instance, there's only really 2 or 3 buttons to the game, but it plays as if you have all of the different options that you would in like Ultimate Marvel vs. Capcom 3. You've got your launchers, your sick air combos, a big roster of characters with tons of unique attacks and unique animations, and just overall a really solid package for a Versus game. Now, since we are talking about my backlog and just the backloggery in general, I did also want to make a special note that the next couple games that I want to talk about are games that I actually completed. Not just beat, but actually went the extra mile to go 100%. And some of them might be cheating, as you'll see, since there really only is one path to the end, and that path is 100%. But either way, I just wanted to sort of differentiate these, because they're not just being beaten, they were beaten 100%. So I found out about this game quite a while ago, and I can't even really call it a full game. It's more of like a tech demo. It's just a single level, but it is sort of a full package, if you will. The game's story still ends after the first level, so it is its own standalone thing, but this is a shmup in the vein of like the Touhou or Toho games. It just plays very similar to those games, and saying that I completed it is cheating a little bit since it is just the one level and there's not really any extras. This one is still pretty enjoyable for what it is. It's just not very long, and I wish there was more to it. Knights of the Round is such a special game to me because it was one that I was actually never able to beat until the Beat 'em Up collection on Switch, just because I was never able to beat the game given the limited amount of continues that you get on the SNES version. I would play this game for hours with my cousins, trying to get past certain bosses, certain stages, but I was finally able to beat it, and it was such an enjoyable experience. The soundtrack was fantastic. The last couple stages were not perfect, but still pretty fun, and it's definitely an experience I want to revisit in a full video. So I know before I said I had some extreme bias towards anything that Daisuke Amaya has made, but Iike Chan is just probably the exception to the rule. Iike Chan was not enjoyable. Something about the experience felt off the entire time. The pixel art and like the music and the charm and everything is still there, but the experience just felt weird, and there's not really anything I can articulate to express that to you. It's just not an experience I would recommend. Metal Slug 3 was my first Metal Slug experience ever, and in between me playing it for the first time and actually beating it, I did get to try Metal Slug 4, 5, 6, X, and 1, but this was the first one that I chose to beat just because it was my first experience, and it was pretty excellent. There were definitely some times that made it feel like it was a quarter muncher, but thankfully this is one of those modern ports where you can just shove as many quarters as you need in, and if it wasn't for that, honestly, I probably wouldn't have seen the end, but either way, it was still an excellent experience. So here's kind of a weird one, since the packaging on the box does count all of the different sub-games in Superstar as separate games. I'm going to sort of do that as well. I am recording this all in one shot for these two games, but first I want to talk about Gourmet Race. This is probably the shortest game that's included with Kirby Superstar, but it's not even worth the short amount of time. It's just you running and racing against DDD through a couple different stages and trying to get the best time. It's just not fun. It's not very fun when you look at the rest of the package, which, speaking of that, Spring Breeze was a great way to start off Superstar. I think that's, if I'm not mistaken, that's the first thing or the only thing that you can play when you first boot it up, and it's supposed to act as a sort of pseudo remake of Kirby's Dream Land, which I think was an excellent move. The game plays amazing, it was super fun, and just overall a great introduction to Super Nintendo Kirby. And that is going to do it for all the games I beat in 2018. I do apologize for getting this video out so late in the year. It was meant to come out in like January, but you know how life stuff is, and hopefully this year actually I have the 2019 video already in the works, so I'm planning on getting that done and completed by January. But thank you guys for watching, and I will catch you later.